Hello, and my name is Michael Delamonica, and welcome back to Flap in Focus. We are doing a series regarding the Massachusetts 2nd District congressional race. I featured Tracy Lavorne last segment, and here I have Representative James McGovern, the incumbent Congressman for that district, and so I'm going to be basically asking the same questions to Representative McGovern, and you can compare and contrast. The 2nd District features Leominster, Massachusetts, as well as several other towns in our viewing area. As I said last time, best bet is to check a map to see what town you are in and whether you are 2nd or 3rd District, because it's not necessarily going to go by logic or common sense. So check which district you are and get out there and vote early. We have early voting in Massachusetts. So again, Representative McGovern, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today.
Happy to be with you.
And so we'll get right to the questions. What is one of the top priorities that, if you are reelected, what is the top priority that you would like to work on for next term?
Well, I think one of the issues that we need to focus on is the growing inequality in our country. You know, job numbers look good, but when I go into coffee shops in Leominster and Worcester and other places in my district, I bump into people who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. You know, if you look at the figures, corporate profits are up and wages are flat. We need to figure this out. We need to make sure that people, when they get a job, can earn a livable wage and have decent benefits and be able to have retirement security. And I think Congress needs to be refocused on not just helping the well-off and the well-connected, but we need to be focused on helping those in the middle and those struggling to get in the middle. And there are lots of things we can do, to help put people back to work in good jobs. One of the things I want to see happen is an infrastructure bill. You know, I have a big district. I drive all around the place. Sometimes I think I need a chiropractor because the roads are in such disrepair. But we ought to have a major federal infrastructure bill to rebuild our country and to put people back to work with good jobs that pay good wages. So, that's one of my major focuses.
Going back to the last term, cite one area in which you are proud accomplishment of yours over the last term or two, and one area in which you feel that was either a missed opportunity or something you'd want to improve on.
Well, I think one of the missed opportunities in the last Congress was that we didn't get an infrastructure bill. I have strong disagreements with Donald Trump, but one of the things I thought we'd be able to come together on is an infrastructure bill, because he said that he wanted one during the campaign. And what we got was a press release, basically saying that the burden of rebuilding our country ought to fall on cities and towns. Well, cities and towns are already strapped. They can't, they can't absorb the enormous costs that are involved in rebuilding our country. And so that's one area where I think there was a missed opportunity, and I hope that if we get back, that maybe the climate will be such that we can come to an accommodation on that. There are lots of accomplishments that I feel proud of. I mean, one is, I passed a bill along with Senator Susan Collins, a Republican from the state of Maine. She did in the Senate, I did in the House, which is a bill basically to help grandparents who are raising their grandchildren because their kids are battling with this opioid crisis. I've had a lot of grandparents come in to see me over the last few years trying to figure out, how do they manage all of this? And so we passed this bill. The president signed it into law. Another bill that I'm really proud of was we called the Wounded Warriors Service Dog Act. There's a place not too far from here in Princeton called Needs, which trains service dogs, for our veterans who are returning, some of them suffering severe trauma and other injuries. But the cost of training a service dog is expensive, and our veterans oftentimes have a difficult time being able to get them. I introduced a bill. It was kind of languishing, so I took that bill and I attached it to a defense appropriations bill, and now there is a program that provides $10 million to help train service dogs so more of our veterans can be able to get them. So those are just a couple of the things that I'm proud of. There's a lot more, but I know we have limited time here.
Yeah. You're in a district that is rather diverse, contains more Democrats than Republicans, but a lot of independents.
Right.
And you have a lot of social moderates and socially liberal people, fiscally conservative, socially moderate people. The word JFK, Democrat, has been used a lot to describe this district, meaning basically a socially moderate or a slightly socially conservative or a slightly fiscally conservative Democrat. With that said, I'm just going to present to you a couple of the hot button issues
Sure.
out there that voters may be concerned about, that they ask about, and just wanted to give get your take on them. Resurrection of the assault weapons ban, so-called. How would you come down on that?
Well, I favor an assault weapons ban. Yeah, look, I respect the Second Amendment, but I'm listening to a lot of young people all across my district, including in Leominster, who have come to me and said they don't want to live in a world where they have to be worried about going into a movie theater or going into a nightclub or going to a concert or even going to church and have to worry about somebody coming in with an assault rifle and shooting them. And we have massacres that are happening on a regular basis in this country, I think we ought to at least debate these issues. I favor expanding universal background checks. We can't even get a debate on that in the current Congress. I favor banning bump stocks. I mean, that's what the shooter in Las Vegas used to kind of readapt his semi-automatic weapon into something like an automatic weapon that killed so many people. Right now, if you're on an FBI terrorist watch list, you can't fly on a commercial plane, but yet you can go out and buy an assault weapon. And I would just say to people, that no matter where you come down on these issues, I think things are at a point where we ought to at least debate them, and people ought to be on record voting yes or no. And yet we have a Congress that, in the aftermath of massacre after massacre after massacre, all we do is we have a moment of silence. And I think a lot of young people, in my district and all across the country, have had it. They don't want to live in a country, in a world where they have to worry about being shot. And so I think there are some common sense things we could do without infringing on people's Second Amendment rights.
Abortion rights, Roe versus Wade, hot button issue. We have an increasingly conservative Supreme Court. We don't know what could happen in the future. Your stance on that for voters?
I support Roe versus Wade. I support a woman's right to choose. I find it somewhat, astonishing that a bunch of mostly men, are going to try to restrict the law, with regard to women's reproductive rights. I'm worried about the tilt of the Supreme Court because I believe that right now there probably is a majority in the Supreme Court that will overturn Roe versus Wade and take away a woman's right to choose. I think that is very disturbing, so I support, protecting women's reproductive rights.
And would that include also something more within the U.S. Congress purvey, not altering Planned Parenthood funding?
Well, right now, I mean, no federal money at all goes to support abortion. That is the federal law. That is the Hyde Amendment. And so when people talk about money going to Planned Parenthood, for abortions, it doesn't. That's just it is prohibited by federal law. Planned Parenthood does a lot of things. I mean, they do cancer screenings. They in areas where there's no community health centers and in areas where people don't have easy access to hospitals. Planned Parenthood provides basic health care needs for a lot of people, not just women, by the way, but men as well. So I support making sure that people have good health care and they get the support for health care services that they need.
Your opinion on the Trump tax cuts, so-called?
I think I was opposed to the Trump tax cuts. Let me tell you why. Because 83% of the benefits go to the top 1% in this country. The millionaires and the billionaires and the big corporations, they're not hurting. The people who are being squeezed are those in the middle, those struggling to get in the middle. But you have a tax cut that basically, is all about helping the well-off and the well-connected. And it basically, and those, by the way, those corporate tax cuts, they're all permanent. The modest, and in some cases there's no benefits to the middle class, but what there is for the middle class, those aren't even permanent. Those are going to sunset. So it tells you where the mindset of those who put this tax cut together really are. And by the way, it adds trillions to our debt. And we just heard the Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell say, when asked how you're going to pay for these tax cuts, he said, and you can Google this, we have to look at Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So they're giving a tax cut to the richest people in this country. All these corporations, by the way, that got this tax cut, they didn't create more jobs. They didn't even raise people's wages. A few people got bonuses. They took the money and they pocketed it. But they got all these great benefits, and now what we're being told by the Republican leadership is that we're going to pay for them by going after Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I am going to fight them on that with every ounce of strength I have, because those programs, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, are essential for many of my constituents here in the 2nd Congressional District.
Let's say hypothetically, though, that those tax cuts didn't go away. What would be one fix that you would propose?
On the tax cut?
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, one is we ought to pay for our tax cuts like we pay for, as we should pay for anything that we're going to add to the budget. But I would like to see more of the benefits helping working people, not helping those at the top. And by the way, I think the corporate tax rate went down from like 37% to like 21%. I may be off by a percentage point or two. But if we didn't give corporations such a big tax cut, we could have taken that money and we could have put it toward fighting the opiate crisis, or we could have put it toward rebuilding our country. I mean, I think rebuilding our country, our roads, our bridges, our water, our sewer systems, dealing with this opiate crisis is a hell of a lot more urgent than giving a millionaire or a billionaire or a big corporation another tax cut. So I would change the calculation as to where the benefits went, and I would lessen the cut that was given to corporations and use that money instead to deal with these other problems.
If reelected, what would be a priority bill that you would like to sponsor next term?
Well, I mean, we got to rebuild our country. I mean, so infrastructure. When we're talking about infrastructure, we're not just talking about roads and bridges. We're talking about increased rail service. I would like to have us in this country over the next decade, construct the finest railway system in the world that connects our communities, that connects our states. I think it will help spur economic development. It will also help, protect our environment. I also, want to make sure that we address issues like climate change. I represent over 2,000 farms in my district. I'm on the Agriculture Committee as well as being on the Rules Committee. These farmers, some of them who've been farming for decades and decades and decades, are talking to me more and more about climate change because they're seeing the effects of these crazy weather patterns on their ability to grow food. I mean, they get it. I mean, these are issues that aren't just some academic conversation, in the back of some university. These are real issues. So we need to address that as well. I want to get money out of politics. I mean, too much money is being spent in these political campaigns. It's obscene. Now, the Supreme Court has unfortunately made some terrible decisions like Citizens United, which makes it very difficult for Congress to limit spending in political campaigns. But we need to find ways to have more transparency. All these dark money, super PACs, they ought to be forced to report who gives to them, so we know who's supporting these super PACs. And we got to find a way to get around what the Supreme Court decided on Citizens United, and we need to limit the amount of money, because I'll tell you, I think money is the most corrupting. Is corrupting our politics, and unless we do something about it, then all you're going to get is people elected who care about pleasing some big money special interest, and they're not going to care as much about regular people.
We seem to be becoming more politicized, or polarized, I should say, as a country, politically polarized. And as a congressman, what do you see your role in helping to heal some of that division?
Well, if Democrats win control of the House, I will probably be the chairman of the Rules Committee. And we kind of, basically, the Rules Committee is a traffic cop of Congress. We decide how bills go to the floor, whether they can be amended or not. Under this current Congress, they shut everything down. I mean, there's virtually no deliberation. You can't offer amendments. This is not a democracy. This is not the way this place is supposed to work. I want to have a more accommodating Congress where, not only people who think like me get to offer their ideas, but people who I disagree with ought to be able to offer their ideas. We ought to be able to have those debates. If I disagree with you, I'll vote against you on the House floor. But I shouldn't be shutting you out of debate. I shouldn't be closing your opportunity to offer your ideas. I mean, you know, I first started working in the Congress for Joe Moakley of South Boston. He was the chairman of the Rules Committee. There were very few what we call closed rules. Most of the bills came to the floor. People get to offer their amendments. We now have the most closed Congress in the history of the United States. I think it's bad for our country, and I think it undermines the Congress. So I would like to open things up. And the other thing I'm going to say, I would appeal to the president, you know, to tone it down, you know, to stop the insulting tweets, you know, and to come to the table, you know, not calling that your political adversaries be locked up, but finding whether or not there's common ground. You know, when I was in college, I worked for George McGovern, who was a big liberal from South Dakota. One of his closest friends was Barry Goldwater, a big conservative from Arizona. I used to say to him, "What's this McGovern-Goldwater friendship all about?" And George McGovern would say, "You know what, he's a good guy. I like him, he's a patriot. We disagree on a lot of things, but you know what, you don't have to agree on everything to agree on something. And there's something we agree on, we come together, we get it done." That's the kind of spirit I think we need back in the United States Congress.
And if you're reelected, and if the Democrats retake control of the House of Representatives, who do you intend to support as Speaker of the House?
Right now, Nancy Pelosi is who I would. I think she's the only one running on the Democratic side. I know she's been targeted by some of the conservative groups, but I think she's targeted because she's effective. But you know, if she decides not to run, then we'll see who else there is. But I think she's been a good leader.
Any stories that stick out to you in going across the district in your re-election campaign? You're out there pounding the pavement. You're out and about. Any stories that stick out in your mind of any interactions you've had recently that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, when I'm in, you know, I was at a supermarket the other night, you know, picking up my groceries, and about a half a dozen people came up to me and said, we have to have more civility and more decency in our politics. I hear that all the time. I mean, people, you know, are tired of the rants and the screaming and the yelling and the, you know, this is not normal. This is not the way this government is supposed to be run. And I tell people all the time that there are lots of issues on the ballot. I mean, healthcare is one of them. We want to protect people with pre-existing conditions. I mean, jobs, you know, income inequality, climate change, agriculture. I mean, I go on and on and on. But there's another issue on the ballot, and that is decency. And, you know, people deserve a government that is good, clean, and decent. I worry, you know, in large part because of the way the president has set the tone, that we're losing our decency. We're losing our humanity. You know, we're losing some of our goodness. You know, he says, "I want to make America great again." Well, I've always believed America was great. I mean, I think this is the greatest country in the world. I thank God my kids were born here. Every time I see our veterans, I thank them for their service in protecting our freedoms and our liberties. But I worry that, you know, so America's always been great. But what we need to do in this election is we need to become good again. We need to recapture our goodness, and we need to refocus government back on to helping regular people. And we have to stop these culture wars and these screaming matches, and we need to get back to basics.
Well, a couple minutes remaining in our segment, and I thank you again for coming on the show. But anything you'd like to take this time, a couple minutes, to address the voters of the 2nd District? Well,
thank you. It's been a privilege to represent the voters of this district for many years. It's been the privilege and honor of my life. There's a lot we need to do to help lift up our communities, and I want to be part of that. As I said, I want to fight for good jobs that pay good wages. I want to make sure that we protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I want to try to figure out ways to make college more affordable for our young people. And I want to make sure we're good stewards of this environment because we only have one planet. And I think we've messed it up, and we need to get back to figuring out how we pursue clean, green, renewable energy, you know, to not only protect our planet but create more jobs. So, look, I pride myself on my accessibility. You don't have to agree with me on everything to know that I care deeply about this community, and And we have a lot more to do, so I respectfully and humbly ask for your vote on November 6th, and I encourage everybody to get out and vote. These are the most consequential elections of our lifetime. It is important that everybody participate.
Congressman, thank you so much for coming on.
All the best.
Good luck.